as a longtime divorce lawyer who's drafted many, many prenups in similar situations, I can infer kind of some things from what I would imagine is the situation. But yeah, I have paid very little attention to Taylor and Travis and, kind of whatever they've got going on.
Yeah, then this is just more conversations about these big type of weddings
Yeah.
versus them specifically. This is just the most relevant one because it happened more recently. Of course, they're just huge, super mega stars, both of them, especially Taylor, but now even Travis. But yeah, it's interesting with these NDAs. Like the prenup stuff, we'll talk about that. There's a lot of like Twitter bot accounts that have shared details of their prenups. So how much of that is actually real? God knows. Like everyone kind of makes up what they want to frame and get viral. So I don't know how much of their actual information is out there in the internet.
I just doubt that any of those Twitter bots have any information about the real prenup. I think they're making it up because it'll go viral. And, because the reality is that if those lawyers and anybody on their staff actually released any of that information, Taylor's team would sue the crap out of them all the way to their grave. So there is no scenario under which that stuff has been released.
So this is interesting for me. So obviously Travis Kelce, very wealthy on his own, very successful on his own, had his own career. So you can assume
he's only worth $100 million.
Yeah, he's only worth 100. But he's got his own team of lawyers, correct? Mm-hmm. Like just lawyers that he has and he's come up with, right? And then Taylor, kind of her huge enterprise, everything she's done, obviously mega, mega successful. She's got a team of lawyers. So when two people like that get married, do they go outsource and get new lawyers for a prenup, or did they have their existing team do it, or how does it work with the lawyer situation?
Yeah, so here's the thing that I think nobody understands about celebrity prenups. And it is that it is not two human beings getting married with a prenup. That's what everybody thinks it is, but it's not. What it is, the secret is that Taylor is a human being at the top of a mega corporate environment. She has entities on top of entities on top of entities. And Travis, in the grand scheme of wealth, is a drop in the bucket compared to her, but he's still a very wealthy man. Same thing. He is a CEO of an enterprise entity structure. So what really happened, the big secret from the divorce lawyer is, and I know nothing about their situation, but this is the truth, that their companies married each other. That's the prenup, is that she has companies and he has companies. Now, do they have humans at the top? Of course they do, and the humans are getting married. But it's the entity structure that is dealing with the marital property. And a prenup ultimately only deals with the marital property. And how we either combine the marital property, although I doubt in her situation that they combined anything. I bet that prenup is probably fairly straightforward and said, her entities and her property and all this stuff is hers and all this stuff is his. And with as much wealth as he has, I doubt that there was even any shifting of assets as consideration for the marriage because he's already wealthy. Is he Taylor Swift wealthy? No. But that's all in an entity. Thinking you're Taylor Swift wealthy, think of what it takes to keep Taylor Swift wealthy running. She has an airplane the size of Air Force One. She has a staff. She has expenses. Her expenses exceed 10 people's normal income, right? So, I doubt there was any money shifting going on between the two of their estates. It was probably more of how are we going to keep all of this from getting intertwined and entangled if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, if I was on the prenup team, that's what I'm looking at. Now, you ask me, was there already a lawyer on the team drafting the prenup, or did they have to go get new lawyers? I would imagine they had to go get a specialist in prenups, each of them, but they also already had a corporate team. And you have to remember, this is a wedding that was, a year in the making or more than a year in the making?
Yeah, about, yeah.
This was a long time coming. The lawyers had a lot of notice on getting this done. And who among us, the minute they got engaged, or really the minute they started dating, didn't think, oh, there's going to be a prenup, right? So the lawyers were already thinking that. The money managers were already thinking that. The handlers were already thinking, what does this prenup look like? I would imagine Taylor's father has been thinking about what the prenup looks like for since she was 8 years old, right? They've probably been thinking about the prenup.
Yeah.
So they probably already had the prenup kind of outlined and knew what Taylor's side of that prenup was going to look like. It didn't matter who the man was she chose. Now, she chose a man who was already independently wealthy, which was probably in the prerequisites. They probably were not going to, I'm going to say allow, that may be too strong a word, but it was probably not in the cards for her to be dating or engaged or marrying somebody that didn't have his own independence financially, because that's not what's best for her.
Yeah.
So she doesn't need somebody that's going to be dependent on her. She needed somebody that had his own thing going so that she can then be free to go do her own thing, you know. But they probably had a whole corporate legal team because they have a whole corporate structure, each of them, and a future that is bright for both of them independently and synergistically.
Yeah. No, that's super insightful. Yeah, it's crazy to think about because you're right. It is like two business conglomerates coming together.
That's exactly what it is. Now, think about this. Think about just the business contracts between his organization and her organization that had to negotiate what happens with the wedding. Like they had everybody sign NDAs. There's been almost no press on the ceremony, the dress, the bridesmaids, the people, the identity, who performed. Almost all of that is still locked down. What are we, a week past it? That right there is an amazing feat. But why is that? Why? You always have to ask why and follow the money, right? Well, the why is that I bet there is some magazine that has an exclusive on the Taylor wedding, right? And they've paid a lot of money for the exclusive on the Taylor wedding. And we're going to find that out coming up within a month or so, who it is that has the exclusive on the pictures from the Taylor wedding. And Taylor and Travis, their businesses, probably had an agreement that there is money coming from all the endorsements from the wedding. The dressmaker, the tux maker, the shoes. Christian Louboutin did the shoes. He did because that's all either one of them wear. The flowers, the perfume. I mean, all the endorsements. Every performer that wanted to be on that stage, right, that she blessed with being on her wedding stage, right? How much did they have to pay? Do you think she paid them or did they pay her to get on that stage? So there's money, that was a monetary profit-making venture. And then who gets the profit from that? Is that a Taylor business profit? Is it a Travis business profit? Or did their businesses each get a percentage of that? Did Taylor get 3/4 of it and Travis get a quarter? I don't know. But I guarantee you there were contracts on the contracts on the contracts dealing with every detail about that wedding and it being a profit center for it.
Yeah, that's actually so crazy to think about. I mean, it totally makes sense though. I mean, and that's why lawyers are important, right? Especially having a team who has. So can you give me a little maybe insight? Obviously, you weren't there. It's not part of it.
I know nothing about her wedding.
You know nothing about it, but you've been in similar circumstances and scenarios, and this is your profession, and you get kind of how these dynamics work. But do they play nice, these lawyers? What's the in a dynamic like this, with so many lawyers involved, what's that like just the dynamics between the lawyers?
I mean, I think that in this dynamic of the size of her estate in the wedding, I would imagine there was already a pretty strong prenup that was already floated probably before even the engagement. Travis knew what he was getting himself into, you know? So there was probably already a pretty strong prenup. Everybody probably already knew the parameters of what was going on, that this was all hers. She's probably got it so trust wrapped and entity wrapped that she personally, I doubt Taylor Swift as an individual owns that much.
Yeah.
Right? As a human being that has that type of wealth, she herself as an individual is not going to own it. She is going to own almost nothing, right? Because what happens to people like her, they're targets. They get sued. They get, somebody's going to come up to her at a something if they get access and, claim she, gave him a hangnail and sue her. And if she has personally, individually nothing, then there's layers on layers of corporate entities and corporate structures and wealth protection mechanisms that shield that from attack. So she's got a trust that probably owns a bunch of stuff. She's got a foundation that she uses for charitable giving. She's got entity layers and entity structures that are probably more complex than ExxonMobil, right? So, so that prenup was already written a long time ago. And I doubt that it's even all that complicated because her complexity is already entity wrapped and structured, and so was his. In my experience, the wealthier the people that I have represented, and I've represented some of the wealthiest people, in certainly in Dallas. I mean, whether it was prenups or divorces, but either way, it's just which side of the coin are you on? In my experience, the wealthier the people, the more structure they already have, so the less they need the reactionary lawyering. Right? So they're already going to have their structure. They're already going to have their estate plan. They're already going to have their corporate planning in place. The reactionary lawyers, the divorce lawyers, the prenup lawyers, they don't need those as much. They may need some amount of that, but not as much because they've already got it all planned out. Some of the wealthiest people I ever represented in a divorce, they had the trust, the entities, the corporations, like all of it mapped out so much, it was an uncontested divorce with no marital property. Because they individually didn't own anything.
Well, then as a lawyer in that situation, do you make less money?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, as a lawyer representing the uber wealthy getting a divorce, you make less money. I mean, there are exceptions to that. The Ham divorce in Oklahoma City a couple of years ago, I think it was anyway, the Ham divorce in Oklahoma is one exception to that because there was a big alimony claim. But that marital estate also didn't have all of those layers of planning that I would have recommended had I been on his legal team from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like there was this huge alimony claim and it became this national story, but that was because he didn't do his pre-homework.
Yeah.
If you do your pre-homework and you prepare, then you don't need all of that reactionary stuff, and he hadn't done that. So there are exceptions to that, like some of the big celebrities that have died, that die without a will. And then people fight over their estate, right? Like that is a failure to do your pre-homework.
Yeah. And it goes back to like one of our first episodes where you talked about like the downstream effect and like why you are so passionate about creating that infrastructure for people now in your career because you've been in the reactionary position.
100%. And it's part of like me as a strategist, right? That is my strategy brain of saying like, especially to people who are super wealthy or people who are building to be super wealthy, let's get in on the early part of that before you become super wealthy and make sure your structure is right. There's a thing with corporations that if you are planning on building a corporation to scale and exit and have a big exit, you don't want to create an LLC, you want to create a C Corp. And there's tax structure reasons, like there's all sorts of reasons for that. Now, if you're not planning to build and scale and structure and sell for, $1 billion, then maybe you don't need a C Corp, and LLC is maybe the better tax structure. So, it's all about your goals and your plans and your schemes, right? But there's different advice depending on what those goals are. And, the same thing kind of applies with marriage. I mean, if you've got super wealth in your plan and you're building for that, or you already have it, like there's some pre-homework we need to do to make sure that your structure is in place so you have less need for lawyers. Like the more lawyers that are involved in your life, the worse off you are.
Yeah. That makes that's a bar right there. That's a good clip. Can you tell me a little bit about the NDAs thing? Like signing the NDAs, does that keep the wedding still romantic? Does it go back to what you were mentioning before about like it's all about like this is actually like a business kind of profitable thing, and they need to keep all the information ironclad so that down the road, like all that stuff that is that what the NDAs are for? Like why are all the guests signing NDAs? Like,
I think for the Taylor Travis wedding, the guests signing NDAs was important on multiple levels. Like one, it would be impossible for Taylor Swift to have a wedding in New York City and there not be like people going live on YouTube from the audience. Okay, so that's one level of needing an NDA. Like, y'all people that are walking in this door, like, no cell phones, no going live. I bet she even had an internet blocker, like, I'm betting, just so nobody could, like, take the chance on violating, you know? So the NDAs are one thing, you know, just because locking that kind of thing down iron tight to keep a private wedding ceremony private is just almost impossible. I mean, you think about the number of couples that do these deception weddings of like announcing that it's going to happen on one day, but then in one location, and then it's really on this other day in this other location, and how the paparazzi like figure it out and have helicopters and drones and like the lengths to which paparazzi and the media will go to get that kind of information. So the NDA was important to keep that locked down so that she could have a wedding, her moment in her city, in New York City, where she wanted to have it, the way she wanted it, and still have, I'm going to say an intimate moment, but however many people were at Madison Square Garden.
I think it was like 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, like you and your 10,000 closest friends. You know, but to have your intimate moment and your day the way you wanted it. I mean, you know, a wedding is one of the few moments in a woman's life where she is the celebration of the moment. You know, when you have a baby, the baby is the moment. You know, even birthdays or anniversary, like those are about other things and other people, and you're not always celebrated the same way that you are on your wedding day. And so, you know, really the wedding day is about the bride and celebrating the bride. And Taylor was entitled to have her moment. So sure, like, do I think that there were NDAs that probably protected some of the, you know, monetary benefits that Taylor's estate will get out of that wedding? 100%. She is one of the most astute businesswomen that we may ever see in this celebrity branding type of area. You know, the way that she has built her brand and monetized her brand is insanely genius. So do I think she monetized her wedding? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, do I think people were paying her to be part of the roster of people involved in her wedding? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Do I think she paid for the wedding dress? Probably not. Somebody probably paid to be a part of it. You know, those kind of things. Like, there were sponsors of the wedding, maybe not put in that direct sort of way, but like, I mean, if you could, you know, not saying that the lawyers are allowed to say it publicly, but, you know, if there were an opportunity to be like the prenup sponsor, how much money would a lawyer pay to be able to say publicly, like, I drafted the Taylor Swift prenup? Like, I mean, I didn't draft it, but like, how much money is that worth to be able to say that? Like, that'd be worth a lot of money. Would you charge Taylor for that, or would you pay for that?